Really excited to do this. So I want to do a quick round of introductions here. Some of you guys may know me. My name is Hampton. I'm an account executive here at WildSpark. I've been here a couple of years and absolutely love being a part of this team. I've learned a ton, passionate about leadership and helping other companies do that as well. I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
Yeah, guys, it's great to be with you today. My name is Rachel Merritt. I'm the Director of Marketing at WildSpark. I've been on the team for about 6 months. Wish I had been on the team a lot longer just because WildSpark's amazing. Just to be a part of a team where we're getting to transform lives and see company cultures and individuals just grow as leaders and even grow from the boardroom to the living room. It's been wonderful and it's a privilege. So I'm happy to be here with you today.
And our guest today is Josh Etress. I like to call him the king of feedback. This guy loves feedback, but he is the chief operating officer of Anchor Investments and Mission Hotels. They give away, the hotel portion gives away over half the profits to people experiencing homelessness in the Nashville area. And they're building America's most generous commercial real estate firm. Josh, we are so excited to have you here.
Man, thanks for allowing me to be here, and I'm glad you're still willing to call me the king of feedback. I know when we worked together, I did give you a lot of feedback, and you handled it really well. So I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to talk to the audience here today and unpack some real practical strategies to give and receive feedback.
Man, we're excited to have you. And he's not the most normal when it comes to his comfortability with feedback, and he'll talk about that later. He's learned a lot over the years. I quote him on my podcast. You can listen to it. He says, "When someone gives me feedback, it feels like they're giving me a hug." So this guy loves feedback. My goal is that at the end of this, you're going to crave feedback so much that it feels like you're getting a hug when they give it to you. But first, we want to poke the pain here. Like, why are we talking about feedback? Why is it important? So what does the research say about workplace feedback?
Yeah, so we really wanted to start with this just because, first of all, it's very relevant data that was taken from thousands of people this year in a workplace setting here in 2022. But it really this data is really going to show you what's at stake here and what the need is for you, not only as an individual, but if you're a team leader or somebody who oversees multiple teams, why feedback is so crucial. So 65% of employees say that they desire more feedback in their roles. 69% of employees say that they would work harder if their efforts were recognized through feedback, which that's a big deal that, people are saying, yeah, I do want to work harder, but I really need that from you in order to do that. Organizations that invest in regular feedback have a 15% lower turnover rate, which is huge. When you have gaps in your team and you're looking for the right person, it can really have a massive effect on your business and your organization. So that is a huge part of employee engagement and retention. 98%, so almost everybody, 98% of employees say they disengage from their work when they receive little to no feedback, and there's no wonder why there. And then 43% of highly engaged employees, these are your future leaders, or these are the people who really are the glue of your organization, they receive feedback at least once a week.
So, I mean, that data definitely speaks for itself. We've done a few of these webinars over the last few months, and we actually asked a couple months ago, I mean, where do you think your organization, as far as like leadership characteristics, skills, qualities, where could you and everyone else grow the most? And the overwhelming win of the leader of that was the ability to give and receive feedback. Here at WildSpark, I spend a lot of time talking to executives, HR leaders that are thinking for how do we build a leadership development strategy to invest in our current and future leaders. And when I ask, what are those key areas of growth? If you look at your all-star leader, what do they have that you wanted other people to have? Almost every time they're great communicators and they know how to give feedback. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this today. And that's why I wanted to bring Josh in. So this is where we're going to go on the journey. And by the way, if you've got some questions, please send them in the chat. We're going to come back to those at the end and we will try to answer as many as possible. So if you send something in, don't think we're ignoring it. We're going to come back to them later. But here's the journey we're going on today, and Josh Etress is going to take us through it. So we're going to talk about what is at stake if we do not give feedback, if we don't receive it, if it's not a part of our culture and organization. We're going to define feedback. We're going to say this is what feedback is and this is what feedback is not. Then we're going to give you practical tips for how to give feedback, tips for how to receive feedback, and then celebrate, champion, and challenge. That is the model that WildSpark teaches on, and that's how we're getting other organizations to to really take that as like a 3-step waltz, like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and ingrain that into their culture. And so we'll talk a little bit about that too. But let's waste no more time. Let's jump in first. Josh, what is at stake as for an organization, for a manager, if they don't understand the importance of feedback and they don't know how to do it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Hampton. I mean, I'll start with what's at stake for managers if they don't engage their team members. And I wrote some notes down because I want to prepare and be thoughtful about this. But ultimately, you're looking at two things. You're looking at a serious decline in performance. So, quantitatively, if you're going to look at your metrics and your numbers and your results, if you fail to give feedback, ultimately, you're going to see a decline there. But I also want to talk about the qualitative impact, which is a decline in the relationships and the frustration that begins to emerge and display itself in those interpersonal relationships. That's really critical. So that's what I think about, specifically quantitative and qualitative decline and how that plays out. I think of the analogy like what's at stake if you don't give feedback. The one that resonates most with me is, if you have a vehicle that has a flat tire and you don't address the flat tire and you ride on the flat tire, you're ultimately not only going to destroy the tire, but you're going to destroy your opportunity to get to your destination. You're going to destroy the axle, and you're going to slow down anybody else that's a passenger in your car. So if the oil is low and you need to fill it up, right, you might ultimately destroy the engine and all the other parts that allow you to get to your ultimate destination. And so I think that's really critical as well, knowing that not only not giving feedback to your team members impacts the team member, but it impacts the passengers, if you will, other people that are headed that direction. And that's what I think specifically around managers not giving feedback to team members.
Man, that's powerful right there. And if you have a flat tire, you're going to address that. And I think as managers, is it that we do managers, are they just afraid to address it? They don't want to, like, they're just kind of avoiding it, and they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I mean, why do you think that people are not addressing the flat tire, if you will?
I mean, I'll speak to a couple other things here, but one, either they don't have enough time, so they feel that it's not worth the time and investment. So that's one. Two, they don't know how. No one's ever modeled it for them or shown them how to do it. Right. And then three, they've probably given feedback before and people haven't responded well. That would be
Mhm.
my instincts or experience with that. But I want to highlight feedback. We're going to talk about negative feedback or constructive feedback. We'll also talk about positive feedback. People will replicate what you celebrate. So I'll say that again: replicate what you celebrate. And there's a book that I love. It's called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. It talks about bright spots mentality. You're actually doing a disservice to your team when you don't create bright spots where your A players, you're learning what they do extremely well. You're celebrating that. That actually allows your B players or your C players to take a look at that and step forward towards maximum results, right? So you want to pull people who are and I'll call them group B up to level A. And most people spend a ton of time with group C, but really I would focus a lot of time group A, group B, drawing everybody up together. So you have both the negative component and the positive component.
Mm. Wow, that's really good right there. Focusing on that group B right there and helping them level up and everything like that. Um, going on to the next phase here, let's make sure we're all clear about what is feedback, because I think it's easy to just say, oh, that's just in this scenario before, oh, that's just a manager telling someone that they need to do better or what they did wrong. And I think there's a lot more that goes into it. So help us define that.
I mean, for me, I would say it's specific intentional engagement moving toward an ideal future state. So specific intentional engagement moving toward an ideal future state. Specific in that it's focused and it's targeted. So you want to make sure you have a really tight target. It's really focused. It's intentional in that you've thought through it in advance, right? So I find that feedback is typically not well received if I'm giving it on the fly and I haven't personally had a chance to think through how this might be perceived or how that might be engaged. And I say it's an engagement in that it should be a dialogue. It should be a discussion. It should be a healthy debate, a healthy environment. I'll even call it healthy confrontation. I want it to be an engagement where we're dialoguing. And then ultimately, you want to move people towards action or an ideal future state. It implies positive change. That's how I think about feedback. It always implies positive change, specific, intentional, engaging, and you move towards the ideal future state.
Mm. Yeah, the intentionality piece, I think a lot of times people they give feedback on the fly without really thinking about it, like you said, and then they can kind of dig themselves in a hole or damage over time. And we'll get more to that in a minute. But I also like that you're providing for engagement right there. Like you want to have a dialogue. So let's talk about like what are some practical steps about how you can give feedback.
Well, let me take a step back on what isn't feedback because I think that's just as important as a question. So, if what is feedback is specific, intentional, engaging, and it moves towards the ideal future state, then you would think of the opposite of being specific as being really vague. So, if I said, Hampton, man, great, you just did a good job on that presentation. At that point, you don't know what was good about your presentation. You don't know what you did well. You don't know what to replicate. You don't know what to repeat. You just leave saying, okay, I did good. And listen, that's not wrong. I want to tell people, hey, you did a great job. But I want to be real specific. I noticed X, Y, and Z, right? Which is really critical. That second piece of intentionality is when it isn't intentional, when it isn't thought through, you can say things that are really damaging. You can actually hurt people. You could actually create an environment where they no longer feel the psychological safety that's necessary for a change. And then that last piece, if it's the opposite of engagement, would be one-way communication. I'm telling you A, B, C, D, E, and I expect no response. And there are very few people, leaders, managers, CEOs, who respond well to that. If anything, you're going to get a defensive response. You're going to get somebody who is starts to grow bitterness towards you, starts to get frustrated. It starts to get put you in a position where you don't want to listen. At that point, you've blocked out any positive future feedback they might give you. So I think it's good to reverse engineer that to pull out the inverse. But to talk about how to give feedback, I would love to dive into that. I know that's our next slide here. And Hampton, I'm going to jump in with a few overarching thoughts. You say this a lot. I had a great leader once tell me, and this quote's been passed down, from person to person to person to person, but they said, love without truth deceives, truth without love destroys, and love and truth develops. So the first thing when I think about giving feedback is I ask myself, am I looking to be both loving towards this person? And am I also looking to display the truth? Am I being loving and display the truth? I'm a big fan of Angela Duckworth. She wrote a famous book called Grit. She has a famous TED Talk called the same title. And she talks about maintaining wise leadership, or it's right there behind you. So she talks about maintaining leadership. You want to maintain incredibly high standards for your people while providing incredibly high levels of care and concern. That's the best way to promote leadership and growth. That's the wisest form of leadership, is to actually balance those in an incredibly healthy way. So if that's 50,000 foot, that's really where I'm coming into any conversation for feedback. Do I have a deep care and concern for this person? Right. And do I have standards that I want to draw them towards, that I want to move them towards? And am I doing it in both a loving and truthful way? So that's the foundation. That's where I start. After that, the analogy I love the most is the analogy of the surgeon or the lumberjack. And I've talked to you about this. I've talked to anyone that wants to talk about feedback. This is the description that I'll use. But you want to give feedback like a surgeon. And I think about surgery for a moment. When it's done in private, right? Surgery is done in private. Only the people who need to be involved are a part of that process, right? So it's done in private. Number one, the surgeon is looking to make the smallest incision they can, the smallest incision they can, right? In order to uh, provide the most healing, or to provide the best environment for growth, right? To remove the we'll call it the cancer, if you will, or the pain or the disease. They're really focused on how do you go about that. And then if you're doing surgery, you want to get all of it. One of the worst things you can do in giving feedback is get 95%, leave 5%, and have to come back 2 weeks later and get that last 5%. You have to reopen a healing wound. And so, gentle, it's planned, it's often followed up by ongoing support and rehab. So you come back from surgery and you have an action plan that you can tackle. And ultimately, it leads to life. That's number one. It's going to lead to life. The opposite of that and would be the lumberjack mentality, right? I'm going to come in, I have a big axe, and I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to be violent. I'm going to take huge whacks at the redwood. And my goal is to fell this tree. that ultimately leads to death. It's often violent. It feels painful. It can come across as harsh. And so you have to be real thoughtful. You don't want to leave a feedback opportunity at where ultimately you've left a bloodbath. You've really injured this person emotionally. You've injured the way they perceive themselves. You've injured the way that they feel about their work and their ability to do the job. And so you have to come in with the mentality of a surgeon. You have to be focused on how can I, in the gentlest, smallest, best way possible, get all of this? Because ultimately I want this to lead to life and not to death. And I've been on both sides of that feedback. And trust me, it's very painful. And if you've been on the other side of it, it's very painful. You can move past that. You can move forward. I'm assuming people who've had leaders here have not done this well. But if you do it surgically, that's the best result. It's going to give you the best outcome.
It's such a good analogy right there. So good, and I think that we can all remember that. Let's be a surgeon and not a lumberjack, and then also just remember the simple. This is very simple, but it always sticks with me. Truth without love destroys. Love without truth deceives. Truth and love develop. I'll tell you this. I think, and I'll be upfront about us, even here at WildSpark. I think we're an amazing company. We have a great culture. We talked about this the other day. Sometimes it's easy to give a lot of love without truth because we all really care about each other and we have the best intentions in mind. But a lot of times that can deceive. And so I think a lot of companies out there just want to be kind and show love all the time. And that's great. That's very important. But make sure that there's truth and love together. And ultimately, that's the kindest way that you can treat someone and each other.
I do have two more tips, Sam, that I think will be
Yeah.
beneficial for the team. I use these, I think, probably because my natural instincts are to be a bit too direct or to be really rigid at times, A, B, C, D, E. And I know I have to come in even softer and warmer. I actually proactively seeking to do that. But a lot of times, what I'll tell people, and I think this does ease the conversation, is to say, hey, I could be wrong. I don't know for sure. I could be wrong. I don't know for sure. I'm not questioning your intent, but I am opening up the door for you to understand the impact. So I could be wrong. I don't know for sure, but I want to talk to you about the impact, not your intent. When you question someone's intent, they feel like you're attacking their character. And we don't know why people made certain decisions. But when you share with them, hey, I'm just sharing with you how this is impacting others or how this is impacting our clients, how this is impacting our team, how this is impacting our vendors, our customers, and other people, that's really critical. So impact over intent. And then I could be wrong. I don't know for sure. And that actually, I've found when I say those two things, people feel a lot more freedom to listen. They say, okay, let me hear what this person actually has to say, and I want to hear them out. And I think that can be a really powerful exercise.
Mm. Do you typically begin that conversation? Do you tell them up front, like, hey, I have some feedback for you? How do you get into that?
I usually say I have really harsh feedback for you. No, I'm just kidding. I never say that. Don't say that. A lot of times I'll just say, hey, I want to sit down with you. You know that working here at Anchor or working here at WildSpark, we give a lot of feedback. This shouldn't be something that's out of the ordinary. My ultimate aim is to help you grow and develop. And I think the best way for me to do that is to share some feedback with you and talk about how we can go about taking steps forward and improving together. And that's how I set it up, right? Hey, this is a normal part of what it's like to work here. And because I care about you, because I want you to succeed and want you to be excellent in your work and have great, strong relationships and also strong results, I want to provide you feedback. Now, I might be wrong. I don't know for sure. I'm very careful to do that if I do know for sure. If it's 100% clear, I won't say that. But if I don't really know, I'm going to say I don't know for sure. This was my experience. I'm not questioning your intent. I just want to share how it's impacting others and talk together about what it might look like to address that and how to go about that. And in a perfect scenario, and I wasn't planning to share this on this slide, but I'm going to go ahead and drop it now. In a perfect scenario, I actually would rather them give themselves feedback before I do. That 80% of the time, they'll get the feedback right. So if they gave a presentation or did a project or had a key goal, I would say something like, hey, I want to talk about that most recent presentation. I'd love to hear from you. What did you do well? What do you want to repeat? And what would you change? What did you do well? What do you want to repeat? And what would you change? And 80% of the time, they'll give themselves feedback. And the phrase I love for that is you own what you create. And so if they own the feedback it's a lot easier. They self-actualized it. They actually are walking through it on their own. And that's the best case scenario. But for about 50% of the challenges, sometimes people truly don't know. They say, I don't know. I thought it was okay. I'm not sure. What do you think? And then you can really dive into your feedback and both the positives and the challenges or opportunities.
That's good. I think you're right. I've experienced that. Whenever you open up the door after a presentation or something with someone, they get it right a lot of times, and then you can just encourage them and affirm them and say, "Okay, that's great. What are you going to do next time to make it better?" Also, this is something interesting. I posted about this on LinkedIn the other day. It was a complete joke. It was a hook line. Sorry, but I talked about the sandwich method for feedback. I don't know if that's a method that people like actually encourage people to do, but as a people pleaser myself, here's what the sandwich method is. And Josh, tell me if this is wrong. I think it's something like really kind, and then the feedback or the tough discussion in the middle, and then followed by something really nice. And I think that where I've made it, I don't think that's the way we're supposed to do it. Where I've done that in the past is because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And so I'm like, hey, you did really, really good at X, Y, and Z. You could probably do a little bit of work here, but really, you did a really, really good job, blah, 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 blah. And I buried the feedback in the middle, and they leave without having a clear idea of what the feedback actually was. And then it was pointless, and I maybe hit on like 10% of it. But I don't know. Is the sandwich method like, Josh, do you see people saying that that's something that people should do for feedback?
I mean, I've heard it before. I don't recommend it personally because people will either only hear the positives, only hear the negatives, or basically hear nothing that you said.
Yeah.
Right. So, I want positive to be focused on positive. I want, and I only want to use the negative. I'll say opportunities or challenges or avenues for growth to be focused on that way. So I think it can be done. I prefer to do them separately, in my opinion. So some people do
Yeah.
like that method, but I'd much rather let them know in some ways we're performing surgery. This is ultimately going to be good. It's going to lead to life. I don't want them to
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm going in for an appointment. I'm going to slice you open. Like, you don't want that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. All
We've
right.
got
Unless
some
you
really
have,
good. I was just going to say we have some
yeah.
really good dialogue in the comments about people's preferences and things like that. So if you're on here and curious about just some different takes that people have from their experience in the workplace, check out the comment thread.
I will say, Gus in the comments, he makes a point here by asking them what they want. Do they want feedback at X at the moment? I think that can be really helpful. There are times where feedback does need to be given immediately. There are times, but a lot of times I think you can say Brene Brown recommends. You say, hey, do I have permission to give you feedback? And then they feel that they're in control of that conversation. The only challenge there is if somebody says, no, I'd really rather you not. And then you say, well, I have to. But 99% of the time, I do believe they'd say, hey, that'd be great. Right. And it puts them in a position where they feel a sense of control, that things are not being dictated to them, but it's a true discussion. So I would agree with Gus. There's a right way to let someone know, hey, is this a good time for us to talk about this? What's the best time to address this? Learn your people's preferences as much as possible and lean into them as much as you can to achieve the desired results that you're looking for.
It's good. The person that just sent a question in, we'll try to get back to that later. Great question. But let's talk about receiving feedback, because I think we all know that if you're someone that's giving feedback a lot, but you're not open to receiving it, then things are not going to turn out well. So this is equally as important.
All right, three things on receiving feedback. I'm speaking from the position of being a leader specifically. So if I'm leading people, how do I receive feedback? It's actually very challenging for direct reports or people that you give leadership to. They often can feel a sense of fear of how you might respond. And if they've worked with toxic leaders in the past or been in toxic relationships or been in any environment where people did not receive feedback well, you can only imagine how much hesitation there is to actually come and speak with you because you're in a position of authority over them in some ways. And that means that you have some degree of control on whether or not that person is being promoted, given new projects, is given more opportunities, how they're perceived with upper management or leadership. And I think that's really important to recognize and to know. So if I'm actually as a leader, I'm a manager trying to get feedback, people are hesitant to give it. They want to tell you, you're great, you did well, I love working with you. A lot of times they want to, at least publicly or at least verbally, highlight you, right? To come alongside you. So Adam Grant suggests asking things in a scale of 1 to 10 framework and getting very specific. So he would say, hey, Rachel, on this most recent presentation, how would you rate my performance on a scale of 1 to 10? And so now she's just focused on the presentation, not on me as a person. And she might say, well, I think that was an 8. I thought you did really well. Or that was a 9. You say, hey, absolutely. What, if anything, would have made it a 10? And what made you say 8 as opposed to 6 or 7? You can say that, hey, Hampton, as your manager, how would you rate my performance the last 4 weeks, giving you guidance and development? You can ask it that question, scale 1 to 10. On this most recent project, you ask it in a scale of 1 to 10. So Adam Grant says, that's one way to elicit feedback or to get people to give you that feedback, which is really critical. Number 2, I'm a big fan of Wes Cal. She's on Twitter. You can find her. She is one of the most gifted writers on the internet, in my opinion. And she talks about making feedback feel comfortable. So the first one is you want to make it easy. That's Adam Grant. The second one is you want to make it comfortable. And so number 1, you want to turn defensiveness into curiosity. That's the first thing you want to do, turn defensiveness into curiosity. Here's some phrases that I'm happy to share later that I think are really good for this. So I would say, Rachel, I appreciate you sharing. It shows a lot of trust for you to be able to speak openly with me. Could you share more about that? I'd say it just like that. Rachel, I appreciate you sharing. It shows a lot of trust to be able to speak openly. Would you share more with me? So now she feels comfortable that this person trusts me. I can speak openly, which is key. Or you'd say, hey, thank you for sharing. I really want to dig deeper and better understand so that I can improve, right? I really want to dig deeper so that I can improve. What did I say or do that made you think that? And you ask it in an inviting way. So that's going to be the first thing you do. The second thing is you want to control your body language. And this is something I've struggled with and have had to grow in. I've had people tell me, hey, Josh, you just need to smile more often. I literally will go into rooms, just smile more and to engage more and to warm up more because I'm in the zone. I'm like, let's take care of A, B, C, move things forward, but I just need to smile more. You don't want to scoff. You don't want to raise your eyebrows. You don't want to roll your eyes. It's best if you can be neutral or even enthusiastic. Like, I'm so glad that you're sharing this with me, or I'm really thankful that you feel the freedom to talk with me about this. That means that we trust each other. I do this. My wife actually told me I do this. I clench my jaw. So I'll start to I feel it coming and I just clench my jaw. So you want to unclench your jaw and then as best you can, take deep belly breaths. Just give yourself a chance to listen. So that's the second thing. 3, create psychological safety. You want to de-risk the situation. You want to make it as easy as possible so people will give you feedback again in the future. 4, read the room. You got to know who's in the room. Some people are not great at giving feedback. They might give it to you in front of a group. It might not be the time or situation. Maybe your boss is giving it to you and it's not the time to defend or to ask questions. Sometimes you need to listen. You need to really read the room and understand the room dynamics. And then last, I always say take stock of your perception as much as the reality. For most people, perception is reality. And so you want to learn not only how you're perceived, so what is people's experience? And then secondly, you'd go in and say, what's actually happening? What's the actual issue and how am I perceived? If you do that alone, if that's all you take from this is that you're going to make people comfortable, you're going to have curiosity, you're going to control your body language, you create psychological safety, you read the room, and you focus on perception and reality, that's going to be some of the best avenues for you to receive feedback in your whole career, right? So Adam Grant, make it easy. Wes Cal, make it comfortable. And the last one, make it count. I mean, I've had people give me feedback, and most of the time they're accurate. They got it right. But occasionally I've had people who are detached or I don't work with, or they're in another department, or they're on an outside environment. And 90%, I'd say 98% of what they said was just completely untrue. It just was inaccurate. It wasn't true. They misread the situation. They didn't have the facts. They were unaware. My goal then is to say, what is the 2% of the truth that they're saying? And I will try to sift out all the truth I can in that situation. Everything that's true, I'm going to try to learn from that. That's difficult because when 98% of it's not true, you can get fired up. So you're either going to fight, you're going to get fired up, or there's going to be fight. You're going to shut it down, right? Freeze, you might do nothing, but my attitude historically has been to want to rise up, right? And so I would just say, look for the 2% that's true. So make it count, or at least some of it. Make it easy, make it comfortable, make it count.
Man, that was gold. Those are good right there. So many notes from there, but I think there's a theme of humility just saying, even if someone is 98% wrong, I'm going to swallow my pride, humble myself, and look for that 2%. And that will build a lot of trust with that person. And then defensiveness into curiosity. I think that's definitely something that I'm going to be thinking about moving forward. Any more tips on? Okay, yeah, I think we're ready to go on to the
Well,
next one.
I will say, I think this is a small opportunity, and I could cover this later, but I think it's important to pay attention to how much space you're taking up. So I'm a bit of a bigger guy, and if I'm standing over people and looking down on them, a lot of times I will get right on their level. Or there have even been times where I'll come to someone's office and I would just sit down on the ground, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I just know if I can get lower, then they wouldn't experience this form of authority or this form of like this person is in here to get me." The lower you get, or if you can get into a position, I think as a leader where they feel comfortable, I'll do that. Maybe it made some people feel uncomfortable. I don't know, but to me, I was like, I just know this is gonna be tense, and I'm just gonna make this as gentle and as just I'm gonna provide an atmosphere of peace in this room, and that's one way I do that. Because otherwise, if I'm looking down at somebody, like no good.
And that's good too. Next time I come up to Nashville and stay at one of your hotels and we're sitting there talking, if you sit on the ground, I know what's about to happen.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
know I'm about to, but that really is a great point right there. Thanks for that. All right, let's go into the next one, Rachel. So, no secret here at Wild Spark. I mean, this is one of the big things we focus on. We talk a lot about different leadership topics, and feedback is a super popular one. And so we've got a unit of content called Feed Me Feedback. And one of the main frameworks that we are teaching our clients to do through our content is the celebrate, champion, and challenge model. And so we're gonna unpack that together. We'll share a couple thoughts and comments, and then even after this, send you all a free resource that we provide that you would find in our content. Rachel, do you want to maybe go back to the that one before? I mean, it would have been fine on the other one, but
Sure.
we like to say, I'm going to do celebrate and champion. Josh will talk about challenge. So when you celebrate someone, let's celebrate what they did. So, like Josh said earlier, what gets celebrated often gets reproduced. And so, if Josh and I are on a call with a client and Josh was talking to the client at the end of it, I said, "Good job, Josh. That was great." And that's all. That's not that might be impactful. It might be encouraging. But what if I said, "Josh, I really like the way that you asked them questions about themselves and actually got to know them relationally before even diving into the sales portion of it. Great job." So I'm celebrating what he did. Next, for the champion portion of it, you want to separate someone's personality from their performance. So I want to champion who Josh is. So in that same setting, I would say, Josh, it's really clear to me that you're gifted at making other people feel known and important. And I really admire that about you. And then you're championing who they are as a person. And I think that those two things, and I'm going to ask Josh a question, his opinion here. Challenge is next. We know that's where the feedback is. You don't want this to be like okay, I'm buttering him up before I smack him in the face, lumberjack with feedback. You don't want to do that. But the way that we teach this in our content is to celebrate and champion. That is withdrawing, or that is depositing money into a bank account. And so as you're depositing money, if you're not authentic, disregard all of this. But if you're authentically depositing, celebrate and champion moments, then when it comes time to give that feedback, you've built that trust with them, and you're able to quote withdraw and challenge someone from there. So I'll leave it at that for celebrate and champion. Josh, feel free to add something if you want, but you can take the challenge part from here.
I mean, on the challenge front, I fall back on Daniel Coyle, and he wrote a book called Culture Code. There was a study done, I think it was Yale, Harvard, Princeton, it was multiple Ivy League schools on how do you actually appropriately challenge people and draw out the best in them. And they came across one statement in particular that had the best results by far. And I'm going to read it word for word. But if I'm challenging someone around a specific item, so to say, hey, my challenge for you is X, Y, and Z. Let's say I lay that out for them. I would follow up by saying this exact phrase. I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations and I know that you can reach them. If you fail, I'll be here to support you. If you pair those up, right? I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations and I know that you can reach them, right? And if you fail, I'll be here to support you. That right there is going to draw more out of people than almost anything else. You let them know, I do have high expectations, and I know you're the person, Hampton, that can reach them. Rachel, you're the person that can reach them. Gus, Joseph, Daniel, Neil, people in here, I know you're the person that can reach them. And then the second part, if you fail, I'll be here to support you. All of a sudden, now they feel that freedom. I have the freedom to fail. That means I have the freedom to experiment. I have the freedom to get better. I have the freedom to acknowledge what didn't go well. And to me, I mean, I use that everywhere. I use it with my team all the time. They know when you back that up with your words and your actions over the next 90 days or whatever quarter you're in, whatever project you're working in, the longer you work together, the more they feel that and the more they're willing to take what is perceived risk to try new things or to get better or to improve because ultimately they believe you're in their corner. And that can take a long time because everyone has a unique history, a unique story, a unique origin story. Sometimes I've had leaders, I feel like it took me 12 months before they really trusted me. They felt like I was in their corner. Then I've had others, day one, they were like, I'm bought in, I'm moving this direction. And I try to move at their speed. I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be understanding, I'm going to help them grow, and I'm going to continue to care for them and in some ways love them well. That might sound weird in the workplace, but I'm going to love them well, right? While also continuing to maintain those standards and those expectations.
It's fantastic right there. I love that statement at the beginning. I know it definitely builds a lot of trust. Rachel, can you go in and show the interactive PDF that we have?
Would love to. Okay, so as you guys see here, we're going to share this with you just as a tool that you can have in your toolkit. We're going to share an interactive PDF with you in the follow-up email where we'll also send out the recording of this webinar, and that you can just hang on to this and keep it in your toolkit. Anytime that you need to give feedback to somebody, you can work through this framework, save these, and revisit them even when you're following up on feedback. And so just keep an eye out on your inbox after, because we've got your contact info. We're excited that you're here, and we want as a start gift to you for you to have this resource and even share it with your team. So that's the that's the T on the PDF.
That's the T.
That's
Thanks,
the
Rachel.
T.
We will send that to you after this. I mean, look, there's a lot of great content out there. But one thing we talk about here at Wild's Work, we want you to take action. And so we're always going to be giving you things like that to make it as easy as possible to move forward with things like this. So, Josh, before we go to one more thing and some questions, any additional tips and tricks around feedback?
Well, let me speak about the tool for just a moment. If you're a
Okay.
seasoned leader or you're a growing leader, let's say you just stepped into a new leadership role, or you're a seasoned leader, you've been leading for a long time. For some people, it could feel like that's not natural. Like I want it to be just so authentic. I can't believe you'd actually take the time to think through this, and it feels rote or robotic. What I would actually say is if you do this long enough and you get really intentional with it, the tool in the beginning serves as a framework to help you. But after you've done this a dozen times, you won't need a tool. You'll know how to do it. You'll know how to leverage it. So tools are fantastic. Things like this in WildSpark, I can't encourage people enough about the opportunity and the tools that exist in this platform if they involve their teams, because for the vast majority of people, no one has taught them this. No one has sat down. So you give them that framework and it makes it feel a lot easier. You're scripting the critical moves for people. That's what people need. Step A, B, C, D, E, focused on the ideal future state. So I want to encourage that. On additional tips and thoughts, these are just a couple of things that have been important for me. I've been given a lot of feedback. I've had a tremendous opportunities to grow over the last 15 years of my career, and I invite feedback, sometimes painfully. One time I actually asked about 15 coworkers, what are the top 3 to 5 things I could grow in? Where do I need to get better? And I got 15 emails, and I thought I was going to die. 15 emails of feedback, like 65 areas to grow. I had to apologize to the team. I was like, I'm picking one to grow in one at a time. And so I love feedback. But what I had to learn was with individuals on my team, especially if I was in the wrong. So sometimes feedback, you're not in the wrong. You're just learning, you're trying, you're exploring, you're experimenting. But sometimes you've done something wrong. And what I had to recognize is when I was wrong, I would look somebody in the eye and I would say, and let's say, Hampton, you had brought something up that I had done wrong, truly wrong. that was hurtful or painful or didn't go well or, fill in the blank, I would say, Hampton, man, I want you to know that you're right. I was wrong. I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that I did this. Will you help me grow in this area? And that completely disarmed people because it was an opportunity to say, I'm asking you for help. You are right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Will you help me grow? And then what I would do is I would say, hey, I am going to isolate. I think that you give me 3 or 4 pieces of feedback, and I think they're true. Which one of these has had the biggest negative impact, or has had been the biggest challenge? And I try to isolate one specific item, and I tell people, I say, what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is I would love to map out what the ideal future state looks like. What does good look like? What does excellent look like in this area? Share that with you so that we can agree on that. And then can I check in with you at day 30, 60, and 90 to ask how I'm doing? I'll come to you and say, hey, have you seen what I've done this well? Have you seen what I've done this poorly? How could I improve? And not only have I had CEOs and members of our executive leadership team have really loved that, but also my team members have loved that. It takes a lot of intentionality to do that. And I try to isolate one item because I can't grow in 8 items at once, even though I need to the vast majority of the time. And that's always been just really powerful for me in search of actually seeing positive change. And then I will tell them, if you see me do it right, please let me know. I know I struggle with this. I'm working really hard. If you see it do it right, just pull me aside and say, hey, I noticed you made improvement there. And people have done that for me. I mean, I can see radical change at times 30, 60, or 90 days in. So those are my additional tips and tricks. Feedback is a great thing. I do feel like part of my brain is broken. If somebody gives me feedback, I really want to give them a hug. They care that much about me that they would share with me. That's my perception of it. That wasn't the case in my early 20s, but I remember having this revelation of like, this person cares about me. At least that's what I would believe the best, and go from there. So those are just a few thoughts, additional tactics that you can use.
Hey, Etress, I'm curious. When you had 15 people email you a bunch of different things you can improve on, was that at WildSpark or was that where you're at now?
That was at WildSpark. I literally thought I was going to die. I don't do that anymore. I was like, this is horrible. I mean, I just wanted to shut my computer down and leave work.
I'm done for the day, guys.
Yeah, I don't do that now. I might pick 2 people at a time, or layer it in a more private manner. But yeah, at that point, I thought, I'm surprised they haven't fired me yet. So.
Oh man, good times. Well, my additional tips and tricks would really be right here. Because one thing we talk about is it's great if you can become good at feedback on your own. So you might be on this webinar and you might be the only person in your organization on it. And you're learning about feedback, and that's great. But our goal as an organization at WildSpark is to make this as easy as possible, meaning we make feedback a part of your culture. All the time I hear from HR leaders, we want to have a feedback culture. We want to do it. Well, if you teach one person or 2 people, that's a start. But what if you got executives, middle managers, employees, everybody involved? That's what's going to make this a lot easier. And that's our goal at WildSpark. So what that would look like is we've got content. We've got 3 different lessons on feedback. And whether you're an executive, a middle manager, a high potential, whatever, you're going to do a lesson on Celebrate Champion Challenge. You're going to learn in detail about that on your own. But here's where I think this is where it could have an impact on your culture. Within WildSpark, you will come together with a team and actually have a guided discussion about that. So if you're using WildSpark with 50 people in your organization, you'll be broken into small groups. And once a month, you're meeting about what you learned about this Celebrate Champion and Challenge. And what that will do is help you open up gateways and doorways to actually have conversations about feedback, because you all know that this is what we're agreeing that we want to learn and grow on. Right now at WildSpark internally, we are doing tough conversations. And so last month we had a conversation about how we should have more tough conversations with each other. And it makes it radically easier when everyone agrees with that. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We'll give you more information about that later. But again, it's learning in isolation is helpful, but learning as a team and your whole organization, that's what drives this to become a part of your culture in a much more scalable way. So that's what we offer at WildSpark. Rachel, I don't know if you wanted to add anything before we went to questions.
Yeah, something that just popped up into the comments that really I think resonates with our vision for this is Joseph Tricito. You just shared that middle management is on the front lines of the workplace today more than ever. And at WildSpark, our heart and our mission is, and the hero of our story is the mid-level manager, the people that are on the front lines, the people that, whether they've been thrust into a leadership position and they're just trying to figure it out, or whether they've been patiently waiting, we want to make sure that you're equipped. And something that our VP of operations, his name is Corey Talley, is fantastic manager and human being, but he says that he believes everybody deserves to have a great leader. Everybody deserves to have a great boss. And that really is the heart of the content that we create at WildSpark. And so we also had a question in the thread about what do you do if it's from Jessica at Vode Lighting. She said, what do you do if you're the only person at your organization who really is viewing feedback this way? And so that just to piggyback off of what Hampton said, the mid-level manager is on the front line. The mid-level manager is the hero of our story. And having a tool like this where it's systemized, where everybody is going through this content, it's intentional. And it's not just on demand and everybody's just doing their own thing. It really gives you a common leadership language around something like feedback, and it makes just a massive improvement on your culture. So that was something that a few of you shared, a few things that you guys shared there that I just wanted to address. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Rachel, what you said is everybody deserves a great leader, but every leader deserves to be developed. And so we're trying to help solve both of those problems. So at this point, we've had a handful of good questions come through the chat. We may go back and read through some of those, and if you have any additional ones, y'all feel free to send those in the chat as well, and I'll pass anything difficult or probably all of them off to Etress.
Yeah, well, here I've sort of curated some of the questions that we've come through. One came from Derek McLarty, who we're a big fan of at WildSpark. He said, "Any tips for managers in opening the conversation and getting over the fear of kicking while they're down? Maybe if the worker is aware that maybe something didn't go great."
So is there a way for you to show that on the screen? If not, no worries. I don't know if you can
Sure.
actually display it. I've seen people get slow to give feedback when someone's stressed, overwhelmed, inside or outside of work. Any tips for managers opening the conversation and getting over the fear of kicking while they're down? I think that this is really sensitive. You have to be really thoughtful of this. To the degree to which someone is experiencing things outside of work will impact the way that they experience what you tell them inside of work. So I do think this takes a incredibly high degree of emotional intelligence to know when to share it, how to share it, and the best timing for that. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. There have been times where I'm like, there's so much going on in this person's life beyond the office. Whatever I share with them right now is going to feel like I'm piling it on. And so I'm going to wait. I'm going to try to give it some time. I'm going to look for a more opportune time to give that feedback. There have been other times where I've said, hey, I know there's tremendous things happening outside of work. And what I want to do is actually take the scope of all the things that are happening and focus on this small area or purview of work and share this opportunity for you to take steps forward. And I know it might not be 10 steps forward, but I just want to help you take the next best step. So, no right or wrong answer, a lot of emotional intelligence, use a lot of wisdom, and understand the degree to which they're experiencing those things.
Here's another one that came in from, sorry, I was on mute. The 2022 problem. So here's another one that came in from Corey Kirkland. It says, Josh, do you start every feedback conversation that way, mentioning that feedback is a core aspect of the company/business? Is that a daily, weekly, monthly? What sort of frequency do you share that as part of the culture?
A lot more in somebody's first 30, 60, and 90 days. So I'm trying to give feedback as early as possible so that they actually know this is a part of working here. If I wait 90 days to give feedback, you're either going to have one of two things happen. The person is like, they're offended. They're like, why did you wait so long? I've had people say, why did you wait? Why didn't you tell me sooner? And so they're frustrated to let them know sooner. Or on the flip side, they're not used to it all. And so they're completely thrown off guard. So in the beginning, Corey, or anyone else, I try to give it early and often. As I might give it anytime I'm seeing things. I tell them in the very beginning in onboarding and our approach, we're going to give feedback, we're going to give coaching, we're going to encourage them, right? And I also look to celebrate them and have key wins built into their first 90 days so we can celebrate that really well. But no, not every single conversation, right? It's not a bad thing to say, this is part of what we do. But once you work with somebody for a long time, you don't have to say that anymore. They understand. So really early stages, 30, 60, 90 days.
Here's one from Gus. It says, it can be great to make feedback part of the process too. An example is golf. You get feedback every putt. So how do we replicate that in business?
This is a great question. In my experience, what I've told people is failure is insight in disguise. I always tell them failure is insight in disguise. Most people start to experience failure and it starts to impact their mood or challenges. Maybe things aren't going well. They're in sales and their demos aren't moving forward, right? They're not getting signatures. Maybe they're in marketing and they put together a key campaign, but it's not driving results, or the return on ad spend isn't there or where they need to be. And so what I've always tried to tell people is we have a ton of room to experiment. And ultimately, anytime you're experiencing failure, that's insight in disguise. And if you can be an aggressive learner here, you're going to actually come out on the other side. It either is going to lead to, I say, failure leads to innovation or desperation. You're going to innovate, you're going to get creative, you're going to do new things, or you're going to get desperate and you're going to do things that are poor decisions for you and for your business. So make it a part of the routine. Any opportunity, a putt missed is a chance for feedback. Exactly. So failure is insight in disguise. You failed to make the putt. What insights can we draw from that? And then how do we innovate, try new things, or and instead of getting desperate.
All right, this is probably the last one that we have time for, but as a family leader, how do I give negative feedback to my wife or children? Josh, I know that you're a family man.
My wife the other day, she gave me some really pointed feedback, and I told her, I said, you know what, that doesn't feel like a hug. I actually said that. I said, do not feel like I'm being hugged right now. It can be really difficult. I actually think it's a ton of similarities to what we talked about today. Is it well timed? Am I being gentle? And especially with my children, am I creating an environment that feels harsh or unwelcoming, or am I creating an environment where they feel the care and concern that I have for them? Obviously, I use even simpler language with my children. So if they're 8, 6, and 3, I've really got to simplify my language, right, to speak like them, to engage with them. And then I let them know, and this is totally different than maybe the question, but they know what are the consequences of misbehavior. That's a different type of feedback, right? If I'm coaching them, one thing that we've taught them on, there's a book called Contagious, is that if they took a group of first graders and had them draw a monarch butterfly, and then they said, okay, what do you like about that? What do you want to do better? The 5th drawing these first graders did looked exactly like a monarch butterfly. And the first one looked like a first grader drew it with a crayon in 20 seconds. And so that's the type of feedback I give them to say, hey, we all know our first try is not going to be where we want it to be. What will the 3rd try look like? What will the 4th try look like? And my kids will reference that back to me. They'll say, remember the butterfly, remember the monarch. And I'm like, that's exactly right. We're going to remember that. We're going to put that into practice. Your 3rd try, your 4th try, your 5th try is going to look radically different. And there's always room for improvement. And you can ask other people how to improve, or I ask them, what do you not like about that? What do you like about that? And you draw it out of them. And that's been key. And that's key at work. I try to tell people, your first try, your first cold call, not going to go well. Probably going to be bad, And so I think about my first, our team here, our first customer service interaction, our leasing representative, our acquisitions team. When you're new, it's not going to go well, right? You're going to be average for a long time until you begin to get better and improve and take massive strides. And even getting to average is a huge deal and big avenue for growth. So that's how I would handle that, Daniel. It's very imperfect. I've done it really poorly at times, but I hope I can continue to improve in it as a father.
I'm glad that you got to share on that, because that really, I know, hits home for everybody, and glad that we could touch on the ways that we take this, again, as we always say, from the boardroom to the family room. So, well, guys, it has been so wonderful being with you today. Josh Etress, you have shared so much wisdom and information for us to contemplate on and glean from, and we are going to send all of that to you guys in an email format here this afternoon so that you have it and you can refer back to this. We'll also be sharing little snippets from the LinkedIn WildSpark LinkedIn page. So be sure to go follow WildSpark on LinkedIn, and we'll be dropping little wisdom nuggets. And go follow Josh Etress, and myself and Hampton will all be sharing things from this webinar that we've learned over the next several months, and as we're putting them into practice. But also wanted to let you guys know and get you a head start on our November webinar. Next month, the week before Thanksgiving, we're going to have a webinar that Thursday on 5 elements of every pillar leader development strategy. We're going to talk to you about the 5 things as you're working to, whether you're developing and growing your team and your people or your whole organization. We want to make sure that you have these 5 elements that are embedded in everything that you do and the way that you approach it. And we want to help equip you in that way. So scan that QR code. You'll be able to go and register on LinkedIn. It'll be right here on LinkedIn Live again. And if you can't make that, we will email you the recording. So still be sure to register and share that among your coworkers and your network. If you're one of those people like something that Jessica asked earlier, if you are in a situation where you're like, well, I'm diving into this stuff, but what about the other leaders or managers or people in my organization? Share this with them. Start planting those seeds so that you guys can all be aligned and thinking about these types of things in your organization. So that's November. And then Hampton, I'll let you close us out.
Yeah, and if some of this stuff sounds interesting, if you need help implementing feedback and other types of leadership across your organization, then I would be happy to meet with you. So you can scan my QR code. That'll take you to a link to my calendar, and be happy to talk to you. If you want to meet with Josh Etress, go listen to my podcast. He may or may not drop his phone number at the end of it, and so you can find that there.
Yeah, but I want to give a shout out. Thank you to all the kind comments that are coming through live. I appreciate anybody who actually took their time. You're investing your time, and I'm thankful for each of you actually showing up, being willing to learn and listen, see if there's some new ideas or prompts. So Cameron, Suzanne, Daniel, Ernie, and all the way up through the list, Joseph, Gus, and all the others that were engaged. I just want to say thank you and how much I appreciate the opportunity to share. I hope it provides value and ultimately gives you more of an opportunity to impact people.
Hey, and y'all wish Josh a happy birthday. It's his birthday tomorrow. Woo! And send him your thoughts and prayers, as his wife could be having his 4th child and first daughter within the next 5 minutes. So Josh probably needs to go to the hospital.
sometime in the next few days we'll be there. So, all right. Thanks everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Check your email. We'll be touching base with you this afternoon.